What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Why the D-backs depth will be a weapon in 2024, and will this finally be the year that Zac Gallen gets that Cy Young Award?
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm the host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, and happy Galentines Day to everyone because Zac Gallen finally made his debut this spring training on Thursday. We'll talk about that start. We'll talk about the D-backs step this season and why Zac Gallen could potentially win the Cy Young Award this year, an award that seems to be always in his grasp, but just barely out of reach as well. So we'll talk about all of that on today's podcast. Thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. We are slowly but approaching 1,000 subscribers. Want to hit that mark before opening day. D-backs opening day is March 28th. We are getting dangerously close, so please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, like I mentioned at the top of the pod, happy Galentine's Day because we finally got to see the debut of Zac Gallen on Thursday. At the time of you guys listening to the podcast, we get to see the other great D-back starter, Merrill Kelly, make his debut today. But let's first start with the ace in the D-backs rotation, Zac Gallen, because of course he started against the Texas Rangers on Thursday. Like we said on Wednesday's podcast, Gallen, last pitch of the season last year was against the Texas Rangers. So, of course, it was only fitting in a full circle moment. His first pitch, I guess technically it's not a real pitch, but his first pitch back on a baseball field in somewhat of a meaningful real game is again against the Texas Rangers. And you would have thought this would have been a very vengeful performance for Zac Gallen because, of course, when you're the last starter in the World Series and your team doesn't win that game and you end up going home and losing the World Series, you probably feel some type of way, toward the other team. If I'm Zac Gallen, I did everything I can in that final World Series start. I had the no-hitter going through a few innings, but in the end, my team still lost. And Zac Gallen, the kind of competitor he is, I'm sure he really wore that loss on his shoulders. So you would have thought maybe he wants to come out and get his revenge against this Texas Rangers team. No, Zac Gallen was pretty unconcerned with his Rangers team. And it was actually kind of funny. Before the game, they were actually saying Zac Gallen actually didn't even realize he was pitching against the Rangers. He thought he was going to pitch in Peoria against the Padres today. Apparently, like Wednesday at 3:00 was the first time Gallen found out he was even pitching against the Rangers. He thought he was going against the Padres in Peoria. He thought he had his schedule confused. Little did he know the D-backs are not even going to Peoria, I think, this spring training. So he was confused for no reason. So that tells you how concerned he was with the Texas Rangers heading into this spring training start. And for Gallen, the results were very mixed. I mean, you look at the box score, 2 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, not the best stats, a long first inning for Zac Gallen. But again, he was not concerned at all with how he looked. And this was not a start where he had to go out there and just be dazzling and look like Cy Young Zac Gallen. Like, he was not going to look like that in his first start of spring training, nor did he really care about looking like that. Like, he told Gabby going into this start, like, for the most part, he just wanted to work on certain pitches to certain spots. He just wanted to make sure he didn't give up a lot of hard contact and just wanted to work on things. Like, that's what we forget. Sometimes we see the stats from some of these starters in spring training and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe that really good pitcher gave up 3 earned runs. But for guys like Zac Gallen, like, you already know what kind of pitcher you are. At this point, you're just trying to work on some of your secondary stuff, your tertiary stuff to really improve that. But you already know how good you are, and you already know what you're going to do once you get to the regular season. You're more of a finished product. For guys like Ryan Nelson and Tommy Henry, like they're pitching like it's already the postseason. They're pitching to the best of their ability. A guy like Zac Gallen, he's like, I'm just here to make sure my arm feels good. I'm just here to make sure the pitches I throw have maybe the movement I want or the spin I want, or I just want to see if I could just put this fastball in this specific location repeatedly. So for guys like Gallen, it's all about working on the little things as opposed to looking like the best version of yourself. So even though this wasn't the best Zac Gallen start, I think we're all okay with how it turned out. I don't think we're all concerned at all with Gallen's first spring training start of the season. Like he hadn't really pitched at all. He hadn't pitched at all this spring training. He has done bullpens and simulated games, and this is someone that has not really taken a day off this offseason. But even with all that being said, still his first start against an opposing team, not just guys in his own clubhouse. And we were not going to go into this game and be concerned with the results that Zac Gallen put up, whether they were good, whether they were bad. So for Zac Gallen's first start, he made it out healthy. He thought his pitches looked fine. Really, that Evan Carter at bat was the only one that kind of frustrated him. So if Zac Gallen's not concerned, like we say after every podcast when it's like Erod or this guy or that guy struggling, if those guys aren't concerned, if Torey Lovullo is not concerned, then I'm not concerned. The guy who came in after Zac Gallen, though, he might want to be a little bit concerned if he still thinks he has a chance of winning the number 5 starter, because Slade, I think he's still someone that we all like and still think he has a pathway to making an impact with the D-backs this season, potentially as a long reliever or, something out the bullpen, down the path, I want to say. Down the road is the correct phrase I'm trying to say. And for Slade, he's been in the battle for the number 5 job, but with every turn through the rotation, it just feels like it's more Tommy Henry versus Ryan Nelson, with Slade distant third. He struggled in this start against the Rangers. He didn't start, but in this outing against the Rangers, 2.1 innings pitched, 3 earned runs. He has a 7.11 ERA this spring training. Slade, again, I think will get an opportunity to pitch for the D-backs this season. Long reliever, spot starter, middle relief, whatever it is. But I don't think he will be there opening day. He's not going to win the number 5 starter job. And if the D-backs do want to go with the long reliever, there are other candidates like a Ryan Nelson who will win that spot over Slade. So Slade will definitely be starting the season in AAA. But again, I think that's okay. I'm not worried about Slade at all, because I do think he will get another crack at some form of opportunity with the D-backs at some point this season. So Slade, just go down AAA, crush it down there, and then just wait for your opportunity and make the most of it when you get called up. Then the final thing that I want to talk about from Thursday's spring training game, Christian Walker was back in the lineup after like a week. I think in his first at bat, he hit like a double. Like Christian Walker automatically came back and started looking good again. 300 average this spring training, 364 OBP, 500 slugging. If you told me those are his numbers for the regular season, then we would have to pay that man, because again, Christian Walker entering a walk year, and we might have the discussion if Christian Walker puts up monster numbers, how much should he get paid? If he puts up a down season, should we let him walk? Eventually, we'll have the Christian Walker, what should we do with that contract discussion, but I don't think it's time for that. That might be like a mid-season conversation, maybe after seeing a couple months of how Christian Walker looks, but glad to see him back in the lineup. And I think it could be a potentially really big year, because whenever you're in a contract year, that's a lot of times you look across any sport, a lot of times that's when that athlete really steps up to the plate, when the bag is on the line. So for Christian Walker, if he doesn't want to fumble the bag, expect a monster season out of the D-backs Gold Glove first baseman this year. Now I want to talk about how the D-backs depth is going to be a weapon in 2024. But first, I want to talk to you guys about Amazon Fire TV, because Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game's analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all of the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. If you like the show, please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. But now let's talk about the Dbacks depth and why I think it could be a big reason that they win a lot of games this season. Because again, if you look at the Dbacks, over under on FanDuel, I again think it just kind of disrespectful of where they have the D-backs at. Over under 83.5 wins for the D-backs entering the season. If you think they could get 80 wins, minus 215, which is still like pretty solid value, to be honest. And if you think the D-backs are going to have a phenomenal season, if you think they can win 90 games, plus 245 for the D-backs. But if they do want to get to 90 games, I think a big reason that they hit that number, if they hit that number, will be because of the depth that the D-backs have been able to accumulate through the draft, through their minor league system, and through free agency and their own front office moves. I think the D-backs depth right now is as strong as it's ever been. I think it's going to be a huge reason why this team is successful this year. Having depth is so important for the best teams in baseball. You look at the best teams in baseball, they're all deep from the lineup to the rotation to the bullpen. You cannot be a good team in baseball and not have quality depth. Now, I'm not saying you have to be the Dodgers or Braves where it feels like you have an all-star at every single position, but you can even look at a team like the Toronto Blue Jays, who is a World Series contender. Maybe not on the level of Atlanta or Dodgers, but they're a very good team, and they have pretty good depth all around their lineup and rotation. I think for the D-backs, they are also a team that has depth everywhere. And I think having just quality major leaguers at almost every position is important. Again, not everyone is going to be the Dodgers or the Braves, but if you can just have competent, good major leaguers at every position, it just raises the floor of your team so much. Sometimes it's not always about your ceiling. Sometimes it's just about your floor and how bad you can be. I think for the D-backs, I think it's going to be hard for them to be a bad team. Maybe they don't have the ceiling to win 105 games, but with the amount of talent that they do have and the depth at so many different positions, I also think it's kind of hard for this team to, bottom out at like 65 wins. I feel like worst case scenario, this is like a 78 win team or like an 80 and 82 win team. Like I don't see a scenario where we get 65 to 73 wins and we're in contention for the number one pick. I think the D-backs floor is just way too high for that. And more importantly, it's not just having quality major leaguers at every position. I don't know if it's more important, but the D-backs also have quality depth behind those positions. Like even if those starters in your lineup, in your rotation get hurt, there's solid pieces in the minor leagues or on the bench that can fill in those holes and voids. And that's so important as you go through the season and you deal with injuries and so many different things. You need those depth pieces. And as we currently look at the projected D-backs roster, like I kind of want to go through it and talk about the depth, because I would say when you look at the pitchers, like the rotation, like honestly, if you looked at some of the past year's rotations, like honestly, the 2020 rotation in the moment, it did actually feel kind of deep with the like 2020 rotation had Mad Bum, Gallen, Kelly, Robbie Ray, and Luke Weaver. Like that's actually kind of a deep rotation. But by the end of the year, you're like, okay, this rotation isn't very good. This rotation that the D-backs are entering 2024 is as deep as that 2021, but should actually yield the results that we expect. Zac Gallen, we know, is a stud. I'm not worried about him at all. Merrill Kelly has turned into a stud the last couple of years. I'm not worried about him at all. Erod has looked concerning this spring training, but again, if we go off his track record throughout his major league career, he should at least put together a pretty good season as a number 3 starter. Brandon Pfaadt, definitely a wild card, but your number 4/number 5 starter, Pfaadt, Tommy Henry, Ryan Nelson, like I feel like that's solid depth there. In the past, it's been guys like Zach Davies, or maybe had like a Mike Leake in camp, or maybe it was like a Caleb Smith or Taylor Clark or Alex Young. Like, I'm not saying Tommy Henry or Ryan Nelson are going to be all-stars or Brandon Pfaadt are going to be all-stars. Like, Pfaadt has a chance to be an all-star, but I think those options are at least way better than the Taylor Clarks or the Alex Youngs of the world. I think Tommy Henry can at least be competent as a number 5 starter. I think Ryan Nelson has a chance, if that slider does improve and that fastball continues to get that run on it. I think Ryan Nelson can be a competent number 5 starter, a decent number 5 starter, which I don't think that path was there for Taylor Clark or Alex Young. And of course, Brandon Pfaadt, major wild card as your number 4 starter. Yes, he still could not be the best this season, but Brandon Pfaadt, 3 to 4 years from now, could look like a potential all-star starter for the D-backs. So just by looking at the rotation, way more depth than years past, and even guys like Slade and Bryce Jarvis, Yu-Min Lin, all waiting in the minor leagues if there's any injuries. Look at the bullpen. There's still guys I don't like the Castros and the Scott McGuffs of the world. But in the past, there might have been 1 or 2 relievers that I even trusted. It might have just been like a Junior Guerrera or Archie Bradley or just a Joe Mantiply, like maybe 1 to 2 relievers at a time since I've taken over this podcast in 2020. But now we got Mantiply I like, Sewald, of course, I like, Kevin Ginkel I like Ryan Thompson. I don't think Sal Frank is bad. And then there's some wild cards that I think are interesting, like Kyle Nelson still is a wild card that I think is interesting. Luis Frias I think is a really interesting wild card. Like that's 5 to 7 guys who I like, or at least think is intriguing, which is way more than how it used to be in the past when the D-backs used to just throw out their awful bullpens where you just didn't really trust anyone outside of maybe just one guy. And then, of course, you look at that D-backs lineup. And again, before we get to the lineup, even the minor leagues, Justin Martinez, also intriguing option. Then you get to the D-backs lineup. I mean, you look at DH, right? We're going to have Jock Peterson and Randall Grichuk. We have 2 players to play DH, and we're going to have a perfect platoon situation. Beautiful by the D-backs. You got quality major leaguers at almost every position around the diamond. Christian Walker, Gold Glove first baseman, and borderline all-star level first baseman, and I'll say Ketel Marte, all-star level second baseman with an MVP type ceiling. Eugenio Suarez, maybe in the decline, still a power hitter who does have all-star potential when he's at his very best, even though that might not be the case anymore. Geraldo Perdomo, solid shortstop, who is coming off an all-star season, which is crazy to say. Alec Thomas, super elite center fielder defensively. Corbin Carroll, I mean, face of the league. Lourdes Gurriel, really above average left fielder. And then you think of your bench pieces like Jordan Lawler, potential bench piece, probably going to be in the minor leagues. Blaze Alexander, intriguing prospect. Jake McCarthy, someone that was really good a couple years ago. So it's like, when I look at the D-backs depth from the lineup to the rotation to the bullpen, like there's quality talent everywhere. Then there's quality talent backing up those starters, which makes me feel really good about the D-backs' chances of getting back to the postseason in 2024. And one of the things I like about the depth that really helped the D-backs in this past playoffs was pinch hitting, right? How many times did Alec Thomas come off the bench and come through for the D-backs in the postseason? But now you're going to potentially have a guy like either Jock Peterson or Randall Grichuk available off the bench to come through for you, right? You're going to have other quality, maybe a Blaze Alexander, maybe he's still hitting the ball well. Maybe he's coming off the bench for you, or Geraldo Perdomo coming off the bench for you. Like, I think the D-backs depth at times, there's going to be a situation where you need to call on someone from the bench to come through for you late in the game in a big moment, because it's probably a platoon situation. And I think the D-backs finally have the depth to call on someone and deliver that big hit. I would like the D-backs chances in those situations. And so entering 2024, I think the depth that the D-backs have built will be a major weapon for the D-backs this season. Now I want to wrap up the pod by talking about if Zac Gallen can finally get his first Cy Young Award. But before we get into that conversation, I want to talk to you guys about Factor meals, because eating better is easy with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is a chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. You'll have over 35 different options to choose from every week, including Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Also, there are more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling good all day long. What are you waiting for? Get started today and get after your goals. Fuel up fast with Factor's restaurant quality meals that are ready to eat and heat whenever you are. Pancakes, smoothies, and more. Discover a wide variety of easy options for the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and more. Factor is the perfect solution if you're looking for fast, premium options with no cooking required. Sign up and save. We've done the math. Factor is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. Head to factormeals.com/lockedonmlb50 and use code LOCKEDONMLB50 to get 50% off. That's code LOCKEDONMLB50 at factormeals.com/lockedonmlb50 to get 50% off. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Please don't forget to hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube, because we are slowly approaching 1,000 subscribers, and I want to hit it before opening day. So hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now, let's talk about if our man Zac Gallen can finally win the Cy Young Award this year. Will this be Zac Gallen's year? Because I think it definitely can be. It's a tune that I think my bold prediction the last 3 years is Zac Gallen will win the Cy Young, or it's like some version of Zac Gallen will finish top 3 in Cy Young voting. And it's like, the reason I keep giving that prediction is because Zac Gallen does keep coming close. He will either finish as a finalist or put up a season that makes you feel like he's the best pitcher in baseball. Like, Zac Gallen, by the numbers, by the eye test, definitely a guy that feels like a Cy Young is imminent in his future. And I want to know if it's going to be this season, because just looking back at last year, Zac Gallen, I think, was the Cy Young favorite for the first half of the season. Those first 3 months of the year, Zac Gallen was absolutely dominant before the All-Star break. But second half of the season, I don't know what happened to him, but he just went like a little bit down a spiral, to be honest. You look at his ERA, it wasn't crazy in the second half of the season, but still 4.03, an ERA north of 4 is not normal for a guy like Zac Gallen, who is typically elite. Those first 3 months, he had like a sub-3 ERA. All of a sudden, north of 4, second half of the year. The slugging he allowed in the first half, 345. The slugging he allowed in the second half, 430. And that makes sense because for some reason, he had a home run problem in the second half of the season, and I don't know where it came from. 0.7 home runs per 9 in the first half, 1.3 in the second half. He just gave up way more hard contact, way more loud contact, gave up more over-the-fence pop. I just don't know where that came from Zac Gallen, because he was never a guy that gave up loud contact. He was never a guy that gave up home runs, but for some reason in the second half he did. His hard hit percentage went from 35% to 45%. His home run to fly ball percentage went from 7.3% to 16.9%. Like, the ball was just flying off opposing batters' bats at a way higher frequency than it was in the first half of the season. And to be honest, no one really knows why that is. Like, if you ask Zac Gallen what happened in the second half, like, he wasn't entirely sure. He's like, I was doing the same thing I was doing in the first half. Maybe I had a little bit more cut on my fastball that I couldn't control as much. But like, Zac Gallen will say, I still felt good in the second half of the season. I just didn't get the results that I want to get. But if anyone is going to figure out what the issue was with them, it's going to be Zac Gallen. He's the kind of guy to go in the lab for 3 months and just work on his game. So if anyone's going to figure out what the problem is, it's going to be Gallen and Brent Strom together, the pitching coach for the Arizona Diamondbacks. But when you think about the field that Zac Gallen is going to go up against this season, going to be tough, but also going to be a little bit lighter than what it was last year. No Sandy Alcantara for this upcoming season because of injury, and potentially because he's still unsigned, maybe goes to the American League. The reigning National League Cy Young Award winner in Blake Snell is also potentially not going to be there. I forgot what I was going to say for a second. I actually blanked. But the reigning National League Cy Young Award winner, it's because I looked over to my phone, which was getting some Instagram notifications, because for my Dbacks fans out there, go check out the Coyotes page. Thursday was Dbacks night at the Arizona Coyotes. Quick tangent and plug for me. Dbacks night at the Arizona Coyotes was Thursday. Coyotes players wore these warm-up jerseys that had, the Dbacks snake on it with the Arizona word mark. It was a Dbacks times Coyotes crossover. As you guys know, I'm a graphic designer. I made those jerseys. I designed those jerseys. So please go get one from the Coyotes auction. The Dbacks times Coyotes jersey. It's fire. Also made a fire giveaway. It's a Coyotes Serpientes replica jersey. Go check that out. Both fire. Go pick them up right now. But let's get back to what we're talking about. No Sandy Alcantara for this upcoming season because of injury, and then potentially Blake Snell could be going to the American League, the reigning National League Cy Young Award winner, because he's still unsigned. I apologize for getting sidetracked by my phone and its notifications, but we are back on track now. So those two guys are potentially out the Cy Young Award race. But even if that's true, it's still not going to be easy for Zac Gallen. He's currently 6th in odds. Number 1 is Spencer Strider, which I will say, I think is a little bit overrated. I think he's absolutely elite. But if his ERA is close to 4 again, I don't think he's going to win the Cy Young. I know he can rack up a ton of strikeouts, but needs to be better. Needs to be a little bit better at run prevention if he wants to win the Cy Young. But he has the best odds, or technically the worst odds, at plus 450. Number 2 is Zach Wheeler. Hard to make an argument against him. I mean, again, just ERA. If he's at a 3.6 ERA, he probably won't win it, even though a lot of the advanced stats were the same for Wheeler in like 2022 as it was in 2023, where 2022 he finished 2nd in Cy Young voting, basically put up a lot of the same advanced stats. So if you get 2022 Wheeler in 2024, he's going to be tough to win against. Logan Webb, plus 1,000. He's playing for the San Francisco Giants. I kind of think him and Zac Gallen are almost like the same kind of pitcher, but Zac Gallen's on a team that could potentially go to the World Series. The Giants, I don't think they're a postseason team. And so I think Logan Webb with a 11 and 13 win-loss record last year, I think if he puts up something similar to that, I think it will hurt him. Now, again, win-loss record is probably the weakest thing on a pitcher's resume for the Cy Young. But again, if you're on a team that's not very good, I do think it will hurt just a little bit, especially if your stats are similar to a guy like Zac Gallen, who's on a winning team. Max Fried, plus 1,200. Again, hard to make an argument against Fried. If you look at his numbers the last couple years, I think the only argument against him is the fact that he hasn't probably been healthy enough. If you get 32 starts out of Max Fried next year, beware that he could be the dark horse for Cy Young in this exercise. Number 5, Yamamoto, plus 1,200. Feel like a little disrespectful to put him ahead of Zac Gallen. I mean, we haven't even seen Yamamoto pitch in the big leagues. He doesn't even have a photo on FanDuel yet. So I think it's a little disrespectful to put him ahead of Zac Gallen right now in terms of Cy Young odds. But fine, Yamamoto plus 1,200. A little bit of a risk because, again, we haven't seen him on the major league level. Then Zac Gallen, number 6, a plus 1,300. I think he definitely has a chance to be as good as any of the guys that I mentioned before him. I think Wheeler and Max Fried are honestly the two guys that scare me the most when looking at that list. I honestly have so much respect for Wheeler. And after getting that contract extension, maybe he wants to pay the Phillies back by delivering a Cy Young season. But for me, the question just is which version of Zac Gallen we're going to get. If we get 2022 Gallen or first half of 2023 Gallen, he's going to be in the mix for a Cy Young. But if we get second half 2023 Gallen, then it's a wrap, and Zac Gallen will not be coming home with the Cy Young Award once again in 2024. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. Come back next week for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. Thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.